Okay guys, what does it take to defeat a Grandmaster? At this point in our YouTube channel, this is lesson 174. Do we know enough to go ahead and defeat a Grandmaster? Well, I'm going to put you to the test. This video is exactly for that. I'm going to show you a game where the great Grandmaster Yasser, he lost to Boris Gulko, and I want to see if you'll be able to come up with the moves that the white pieces did and the plans to defeat the black pieces. Of course, I'm going to show you the entire game, but let me start with this specific point in the game. Guys, if you were the white pieces, you should know with everything that we have covered what the next move is, what the plan is. So if you look at the evaluation, the engine is saying this is 0.9 for the white pieces, but how do we continue? Well, here, if you thought, and by the way, guys, if you're following this course, make sure to let me know in the comments the answers to every question. That way I know where we are. So here, you should know enough to have come up with the move Bishop G5. Why? Well, it's clear that I have an isolated pawn which I'm going to advance, and I showed you a game where I actually did this in one of my games. I want to advance not only to get rid of my isolated pawn, but I want to leave them with a weakness on B6. Or if they take me, then I'm going to be able to take back and put pressure on the other weakness, which is going to be A7. So for that plan, I don't need this bishop. So Bishop G5, I'm going to remove this knight. And again, guys, the simplification, the rule of simplification is not only about what I'm going to take, but it's more about the pieces that I'm going to keep on the board. So I need to keep the bishop, the knight. This bishop is not going to be useful for me when I want to do that plan. So that move, I know, guys, that you're going to come up with it. But then let's say we skip ahead and we get to this point in the game. Look at this. Pretty nice position. The evaluation says 1.1 for white, but would you know how to continue, guys? Would you know what the plan is? Well, we recently had a very good lesson, guys, about rooks and open files. And here, the move that we're looking for, and I hope that you're pausing the video, by the way, to try to come up with the answer on your own. Guys, the move that we're looking for, I want to get the rook to the 7th rank. So I'm looking at, well, this is black to move. They did 97. But I'm basically, guys, looking at the move Queen A4 to finally penetrate on the 7th rank. Don't forget, rooks like to be on open files, but even better, the 7th rank. Now, a few moves down the road, let's say you found that move. We got Queen C8, then we got F3, G6, 93. And then, guys, after H5, again, you got this far in the game. What would be your continuation as the white pieces? Well, here, now if you look at the evaluation, you made it this far. You are ahead by 1.4. This should be winning for the white pieces. What's the next, what's your plan? Well, here, guys, Gulko actually came up with the move Queen C6. Now, I think some of you might have considered that move and actually visualized to realize that after queen takes, pawn takes, not only do we have a passed pawn, very dangerous, but then the knight could jump to D5, and they pretty much have to take us. So that's going to leave us with a protected passed pawn. Now, the final part of the game that I want to show you, and actually my favorite, is at this point, guys, we are already in the end game. We're up a pawn, but guys, you don't know how many times my students, myself, we have been here, and then we cannot find the plan to convert this into a win. Now, for this, to convert this, very simple. We gotta use something that we started to talk about on lesson 9091 with Capablanca's endgame rules, and then we had a lesson recently where we talked about it again. And guys, that is going to be the principle of the second weakness. So let me start from the beginning quickly to scan through the game, nothing too deep. And here you can see that the game starts with the Nimzo Indian defense, very popular, very strong defense. And we get the fianchetto variation for the white pieces. So castle, bishop d2, d6, and immediately we get the first imbalance. We get doubled pawns, isolated pawn for the white pieces, damaged pawn structure, but the black pieces actually gave the pair of bishops. And guys, this is something that we are more than familiar with, right? So we got knight b2 d7, queen d3. Don't forget, it's all about that e4 square. So e5, trying to get to e4, that would be a very uncomfortable fork. And here we got the move after e5. We got, guys, knight d2. We gotta control e4. The black pieces, if they accomplish that, then the white pieces are not going to be as comfortable. So after rook e8, trying to continue to do so, well, we castle, then queen e7, they continue to put pressure on that e4 square. And guys, ultimately, if you're familiar with this opening, you should know that many times the white pieces simply prevent that by occupying e4 themselves. So b6, next plan for the black pieces to activate the bishop, put pressure on e4, or many times they put pressure on the c4 pawn. It's doubled, and it lacks support from another pawn. Sometimes they even put the knight on a5. So rook e1 now for the white pieces. And this is a good moment for you guys to try to come up with the idea behind this move. It's not only to improve the rook and put it on the e file, more importantly, I already identified a potential outpost for my knight, so I want to get there. How do I find out the route? Well, to get to f5, I need to be on e3. To get to e3, I need to be on f1. So the rook moves to make that square available for the knight. So rook e1, then bishop a6, putting pressure on it right away. And now, of course, the other plan that we talked about. I got an isolated pawn. I'm going to push it, trying to open up the file. If I accomplish that, I don't have to improve this rook. The rook is going to be already on a semi-open file. So a4 is played. And now, guys, c5. We have talked about this so many times. If I'm white, I do not want to break this perfect center because then I leave weak square. So if I had done d5, this is going to be a very nice outpost for the knight. So typically, if you have a center like this, you only want to advance when you have been challenged. So after c5, I do d5 now, but notice that c5 is going to be occupied by a pawn. So they cannot put a knight there. So guys, after d5, we got knight f8, knight f1. We know what this is for, knight g6. And now a move that you already saw on lesson 52. We talked about outposts back then, very good lesson on strategy. You saw me do a move like bishop h3. Very simple, guys. I know my plan. Again, on the queen side, this bishop is not going to help me out. So I need to get rid of the pieces that are not going to help. If you look at the center, it is locked. So we know knights are better, bishops not so much. So bishop a3, I'm putting it on a better diagonal. And if they challenge it like they did in the game, well, I got rid of that bad bishop. So rook takes, and now the following move is bishop g5. Again, my bishop is not going to be helping me out. So why would I keep that bishop? Instead, I'm going to remove one of the knights which are so efficient on locked positions. So h6, we take, and now guys, we continue with a5. Now, I know that this sounds overwhelming, pretty maybe complicated to you, but it's nothing extraordinary, guys. We played the opening and got to the middle game by simply controlling the center, developing the minor pieces, and castling. Of course, it helps to know your opening. So if you play this variation against an IMSO Indian, you knew about the importance of controlling e4 and probably even about this plan that you've seen it before from reviewing master games. Anyhow, a5, it makes sense. Knight f8, then we take. Already we have a backward pawn on b6. So now we just need to drill on it. Also, we're going to be putting pressure through the open and semi-open files. So of course, rook a6, not only putting pressure on the pawn, but getting ready to double up and penetrate to the 7th rank if necessary. So rook a8, they want to, the black pieces, they are in bad shape here, they're defensive. So the less pieces on the board, the better. Now, of course, I'm going to bring the other rook. They take, I continue to put pressure on b8, and now they have no choice but to be passive. Look at my rook compared to this rook. Now guys, the next move here, this is the moment where many times we start to let go of our games. Many times I've been there and somehow I just start letting go of the position. So here, if you want, try to come up with your next move. I know that when I was reviewing this game, I immediately thought, okay, it's time to bring the knight over to f5. But one thing that we have to keep in mind is I don't want to give my opponent any counterplay. So if I go knight e3, they could do queen f3 right there. Very, very uncomfortable. And look how the evaluation now is completely even. So instead, the white pieces did king g2. This is the difference between a grandmaster and the rest of us. And the evaluation is 1.0. So still, they keep the advantage. Now, no counterplay, no queen f3. Queen goes back to e7. Now, queen b1, putting pressure on the weak pawn. Queen b7, and then queen b5. Very easy to play this now as the white pieces. Now, knight d7, they need to defend, and this is one of the moments where I asked you, what should we do next? Well, I know that I want to penetrate, so this is just, this weakness, it's not so much that we want to take it, but it's more, it's like when we talked about the isolated queen pawn, right? It's more to keep their pieces passive, then we continue to make progress. So if I want the rook to get to the 7th rank, I need to do queen a4, and then rook a7. So knight f6, putting pressure on the pawn, but it doesn't matter because we're going to be putting pressure on the queen. So queen c8, and now guys, we gotta take care of the pawn. No need to give my opponent any counterplay. So we got pawn to f3. Careful with doing something like this, because then the queen comes over, you get into unnecessary trouble. And actually, Look, that's that's 2.2 for the black pieces. That's how easy we could lose the game. So f3, keeping it safe, and after g6, 93 finally. And guys, after h5, there's a very powerful move. We already talked about it, but this queen c6 is a very, very nice move. One more time, if they take, happy to take, get a pass pawn, but after knight d5, they're gonna have to take, and we're gonna get a protected passed pawn. That's already completely easily winning for white. So queen d8, now h4, rook c8, and then we double up on the 7th rank. Again, just putting pressure, they have to go and defend, and now knight d1, rook b8. Notice here that the white pieces repeat a little bit. And guys, back on lesson 9091, we talked about this. There's a psychological factor. We talked about why grandmasters or players do this, especially in time pressure. So anyhow, queen c7, rook c8, queen a5, and now they offer the trade of queens. What should we do? Guys, think about this. If you're playing this game, would you trade queens or would you do something else? Well, here, Gulko actually traded queens and he walked into this endgame that should be pretty easy to finish. However, for this, we need to apply something that we have been reinforcing and talked a lot about recently, which is the principle of the second weakness. I said it again. So anyhow, guys, what would be your plan here? You're white. What's your next move? Or more importantly, what's your plan in general? Well, I'm pretty sure that many of you mentioned something like knight e3, knight f2, trying to improve the knight, or maybe bringing the knight this way. Well, the move, it was shocking to me and very instructive. And the move actually, guys, is king f2. Now, what is this move for? Well, if you remember, we talked about rooks and how important they are. It is for them to be on open files and penetrate and get counterplay, right? So basically, this move is the beginning of a plan to bring the king over so that this rook can never get to the 7th rank. So very powerful. Right now, the knight is taking care of that, but then we need the knight to be active and help us. So we need the king to replace that knight. So I don't know about you, but to me, that was really, really nice. And it is even more impressive, guys, that the engine actually, if I activate here, the engine is saying king f2 is actually one of the top moves. So either rook a6, putting pressure on the pawn, or king f2. Really, really powerful move. So anyhow, after king f2, king f8, king e2, rook a6. I don't want to trade rooks. Remember, my rook is active. This one is passive. Why would I want to trade it, right? So rook a6, then king d2, and then king c2. Forget about the rook penetrating. Guys, you cannot forget that. So anyhow, 98, 93. Now that the king is over here, we bring the knight out. We got to be very patient. And after knight f6, this is so painful. Whenever I'm here myself or I see my opponents repeated moves, I know they simply don't have a plan. So they're waiting for us to go in, get ahead of ourselves and make a mistake. So now time to bring the knight, guys, into the game. And we wanted to come to the queen side. Look at these nice squares for that knight. So b5 to put pressure on d6, or simply c6 to hit that king, right? So knight f1, knight d2, knight b8, hitting the rook, no problem. I go back to a1, king d8. And guys, now that the king, the knight, the rook, they are all on the queen side, it is time to create a second weakness. And this is so, so important. This is what we talked about in one of our latest lessons. I told you guys, you're not going to get to 2000 until you start to really understand these endgames. You could get to 1800, 1900 because you're really good at tactics and openings and so on. But your endgame is going to keep you from getting to the next level. So here, the idea is there's a weakness on d6. I need to create a second weakness, and that's going to be on the king side. So g4, trying to get to do h5 with the passed pawn, and that's going to be the second liability for the black pieces. They have to worry about that. If they don't, I'm going to take, and then my rook could go after the other weak pawn. So anyways, they took, then king e7. You see, going back to the king side, my knight gets active, rook to the 7th rank. Guys, before we do anything with pawns, we need to activate the better pieces. So you typically in the endgame, and we had a short about this, you want to activate your pieces in order. So if I had all of my pieces active here, I would like to start by activating the rook. It's the most valuable. Then the king. In the endgame, it is 3.5 points. Then the knight. Then I think about pawns. Pawns next to each other. The king cannot get to them. So I'm fine. So rook a8. Then the knight goes in, hitting the rook. Now here, before I make any decision, of course, this is a critical moment. I would trust that you are going to take your time, guys, and not get ahead of yourself. Look at candidate moves. Now here, before we put pressure on d6 with the rook, with the knight, whatever it is, we want to make sure that the king is going to be far away from the action. So check. If they go to e7, of course, we got the fork. So tactics are always in the air. We trade, and now, guys, we go after the weak pawn. And it's sad, but they just cannot do anything about it. So you see, potential second weakness, they had to take care of it. And now the other weakness is just going to fall. If you had only one weakness, the king will be over here defending. It's hard to convert. But when you have a second one, they just cannot keep up. So f5 was played. Now pawn takes, guys, connected past pawns. This one is about to fall. And now this is another point in the game where I can see myself, I can see any of us guys easily blowing it, doing the wrong move. Now, if you look at the engine, it's giving h5 as the top move. This is exactly what Gulko did, just keeping this king at margin. So h5, no rush to take the pawn. And that's another thing. When you look at that move that comes to us as an impulse, we gotta think, is it really necessary? Well, there's no rush. I'm going to take it now. And then after king d3, the black pieces simply resign. Guys, with that said, look, we got protected pass pawn, two connected pass pawns, and these are going to fall sooner or later. Now, with that said, like always, feel free to put this position, play it against the engine, and see if you can convert this. See if you can play it all the way until the end, until checkmate. So with that said, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you didn't, let me know as well in the comments, and I will see you guys in our next lesson.